I got up to do this tune, and I came on out with this skirt. You couldn't tell it that Rosalind had sewed it up the side to make me look slim. But my brother's friend Douglas was the bouncer. And when he saw me, he got on the phone and called my brother, who told my mother. So I was singing When I Fall in Love. And I looked up and I saw this figure. It looked like the Hulk standing at the door. And Rosa said, "There go your mother. There go your mother." And it was my mother. My mother came down that aisle, and all she did was walk up to the stage, and she just looked up, and I finished it, and I was going to walk off the stage, and my mother put her hand up, and she clapped. And I came off the stage. That was the last time my mother whipped my butt. My mother had a strap, an old barber strap, that she had cut with razor blades into strips, and we called it a cat with 9 tails. I lived at 48th and Fairmount, and this was at 55th and Haverford, the little Club Harlem.
How many people were in the club? I mean, how big was the club? Was it small?
The club, it was a small club. It was a small club because it was in a residential neighborhood. It used to be Shapiro's shoe store.
Oh, okay.
So you can imagine how small it could. It wasn't crowded, but they had tables. And I don't know how many people sat at the table. But it was a refined club because, of course, I don't think Nat King Cole would have been playing there. He was there. I'm trying to think of, there was a organ group. I don't know who they were. They was before him. And remember, I wasn't into this. Rosalind was the one that was going around seeing these things because there was a club called, at 40th and Filbert, the Powelton Bar.
Right.
I had heard of that, but I didn't know anything about it. Rosalind knew that they would have bands in there, but I she knew about this club up there. My mother.
Oh, well, wait. I just wanted to, while we're on the bars here, I wanted to, so you, after high school, you went right into professional singing? After Bucknell and all that stuff?
Yes.
Okay, now, how did you get gigs? How'd you go about getting gigs? You had was this Oliver Collins and Kearney and?
Yes, Oliver. This was, all of this is, see, I was getting ahead of my story. All of this was after Oliver Collins, and all of this was after I had met Nat King Cole. Remember, I was in my last year
Of high school.
High school with him. But I want to tell you, he apologized to my mother. He said that he thought I was 21 or 22 or something like that. My mother said no, she's just 18.
Was it When I Fall in Love? That was one of his signature tunes.
Yes.
Was that a hit for him when you were singing?
Yes.
So he let you
sing let me sing it.
His song, right? Yeah.
I don't know if he had played it that night or not, but he let me sing it.
Yeah.
And of course my mother, and he said, your daughter has a beautiful voice, so and so. My mother said yes. And she was very polite. He was, cordial. And of course, he was nervous because he had let me come in that back way, which he didn't really do it. The guy who was on the stage door did. We never went into the club itself. We left the stage, went up, came in the back, went up on the stage. Rosalind was standing there. Nat King Cole was there with the trio. And with the other two guys. And my mother, we went in this back room, and my mother told him how old I was. He was, well, you know, that's just what it was. But he didn't say anymore. But he said, I remember him saying, I wouldn't stifle her from what she wants to do, you know. My mother said, well, she's going to school, and her father and my father and I and her dad are, you know, sacrificing to get her to go. He said, but don't stifle her from what she wants to do. My mother said, well, she plays the piano, and we bought this expensive piano, blah, 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 blah. We had a upright. Well, once we got out of little Club Harlem, when I got to 55th and Haverford Avenue, my mother reached in her pocketbook and she pulled out the cat o' nine tails. She whipped my butt from 55th and Haverford Avenue to 48th and Fairmount. My mother whipped me. I had welts on me. And Rosalind ran. Rosalind just ran. I don't know where she disappeared to. She just evaporated. And when I got in the house, my mother asked me, you know, why did you do this? And, you know, and then she went into theatrics. You know, oh my goodness. Douglas called Robert, and what will the neighbors think, you know, but she didn't stop beating my butt. And then I had welts on my arms and my legs, and she gave me some witch hazel to put on these welts. And I put the witch hazel on the welt, and it stung like hell. I went on upstairs. I went in my room. My sister Hazel was in college. She went to Virginia Union in Richmond. My mother Hazel didn't know anything about it. I went to bed. As I said, my father worked at Pennsylvania Forge. And when he got home about 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning, she woke me up. Let's tell Daddy what we did tonight. So I didn't want to go through this big thing. I said, well, can we tell him in the morning? My mother took her hand and she hit me in my mouth. Whopper. I said, now I done got my butt beat, my mouth busted up. But my father was so passive. God bless his soul. My father was so passive. And he told her, he said, now wait a minute. You know. He said, well, did you know anything about it? And did you question Rosalind? And of course my mother said, no, she's old enough to make her own decisions. She knows what we like and what we will tolerate in this house. And I went through all of that. But my father, in doing this, kept my mother from spanking me again. She called it spanking. She beat me. But after that, I think my mother and dad sat down and talked and said, this girl really doesn't want to play the piano. And they never hindered hindered me. So then I went on to school, and of course I had a little something with the girls up there. And then when I had to come back out because I had gotten married, then I had to face my mother-in-law, because you're a married woman now, you know. But she never hindered me either, really, because I had made up my mind, this is what I want to do. When I did visit my mother, she kept saying, you have to learn to make a living. You know, we spent a lot of money to send you to school and what have you, and you didn't finish. And of course, you know, she made the guilt, she put me in a guilt trip. But after that, I was determined. This is what I'm going to do. I was in a very rocky marriage because, you know, I fell in love with the first boy that I, you know, had met. And, you know, he played football. And of course, but it wasn't to be. He was a mama's boy.
So when it shows how determined you were just by what you're telling us now. How did you go about forming your first band? Who you wanted to play with you, and how did you get gigs back then?
Well, then, that's when I got with Oliver. Oliver Collins and Joe Kearney. And of course, Joe and I were neighbors. Joe lived on Union Street, but I didn't know Oliver. But Joe knew him, and we got this group together. Now, they were older than me. The first job that I got was, I'm trying to think, where was this? Someplace in North Philadelphia on Columbia Avenue. I don't even know the name of the club. But I had to be very quiet. I was older, but I wasn't used to being around this. I didn't drink. I only drank orange juice, or I drank Coke. That's been my entire life. I did smoke. I've never done drugs. I smoked one marijuana cigarette at Bucknell, and I didn't smoke it all the way. I must have taken 3 puffs off of it, and I was sick for 2 days. I missed class. And I was so sick that I went to the infirmary, and I told them what I did. She didn't report it. But I promised God, a rabbi, 3 priests, and 2 other black people, if I could stop getting sick and not have a headache, I would never do this again. And I didn't.
Okay, now let's...
So... This is with Oliver Collins. We did a couple of jobs. Then Oliver introduced me to a great pianist, Comar Duncan.
Okay, what are you talking about?
And Comar played a little different than Oliver. And he liked what I sound like. And he got me a job somewhere in Germantown. That was the type of thing. He was a different, very suave and debonair type of individual.
Now, who was singing at the same time you were in town? Was Evelyn Sims out there yet, or?
No, I didn't meet Evelyn until later years. I'll tell you about that. A girl by the name of Dottie Hall, who was a blues singer. They didn't have anyone who did the type of music that I was doing. At least I didn't know of her.
Okay.
that was the first time that I met Danny Turner. Danny Turner was playing with a Machida.
Oh, Machito.
Yes, he was playing. Danny Turner was playing with him. And I met Danny Turner through Comar Duncan.
Okay.
Danny liked what I sound like. Danny was living on Walnut Street, and we didn't see each other that often. But Danny Turner introduced me to a man by the name of Johnny Drew, whose father owned a streetcar line, I think it was in Sharon Hill or Upper Darby. And Johnny had a club on 52nd Street. It was entitled Drew's Rendezvous.
John Drew played in Jimmy Heath's band.
Yes!
And he had the money. He didn't. Sam Reed told me that he didn't play well.
But he had money.
He had money and he supplied the uniform.
Yes.
So they let him play.
Yes. You know him.
I know
all of this.
I know about him.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And
So he had money to.
yes, the Drews, yes, they do.
So Drew's Rendezvous was where was that?
That was at 52nd and Master.
Okay.
And I got the job there on the weekends. Of course, you didn't have Sundays. We only had Friday and Saturday. Saturday, you had a matinee. And Comar Duncan and I don't know who the bass player was. And I don't know.
Joe Kearney wasn't there.
No, Joe Kearney wasn't in with Comar. It was another bass player. I want to say that's my refrigerator, of the ice maker. I want to say Nelson Boyd, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
And the reason why I say it's Nelson Boyd because the bass player that he got was from New Jersey, and the horn player's name was Frank Gatlin. We called him the Gatlin gun, and that was Comar's trio there.
How much were you paid for Drew's Rendezvous?
$30.
A night?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
$30 a night.
And what was your repertoire mainly? Like
All standards.
all standard.
All standard.
You said you didn't like the R&B kind of stuff.
No, I never did any of that. They were all standards. And I had Oliver, as well as Comar, had given me, I wish I had it here now, fake book. And it had 1,000 tunes in it, and I would get the fake book, get the lyrics, and of course I played the piano, so I could take that one hand and do that. But then I would play it, but I would interpret it the way I felt. And when I listened to the records of Peggy Lee, she did Cry Me a River. I like the way she did it. Pardon me. Peggy Lee was all right to sing Cry Me a River the way she did it. But I couldn't sing like Peggy Lee. I didn't want to sing like anybody else. I wanted to listen to them, but I wanted to interpret them. The only person who really had a deep influence on me was Sarah, because she was so smooth, and I believe that she told the story. You can sing, "Oh, say, can you see?" Or you can say, "Oh, say, can you see?" That's not me. That is not me. And if you hear me interpret a tune, it's the way that I feel. I try to convey to you the way that I feel, and hope that you are in tune with me. But you gotta listen. You can't be sitting and talking and smiling and jumping up and down and clapping and popping gum and no.